Well, today we've got a very special feature interview as we get the opportunity to go in-house at Haus and Haus in Dubai. We get the opportunity to work with Simon Baker, the Managing Director, who's going to talk to us about his journey inside the Dubai property market over the course of the last 15 years. You're going to learn some amazing insights about how the buyer is actually the one that pays the fee, how they're now emerging into the seller also starting to pay the fee, and what it actually is like to work in a climate which can reach up to 50 degrees in temperature. Let's have a little bit of a look at our feature interview with Simon Baker. Well, today we've got a really special edition audio as we get the chance to work with Simon Baker, the MD of Haus and Haus here in Dubai. Simon, so great to be able to speak with you today. We've just done a great training session with the team. One of the key things I wanted to ask you about today is I want to talk to you a lot about Dubai, and we've got listeners all around the world. Can you tell us just a little bit about what Dubai is like as a marketplace and how you started in the Dubai market?
Certainly can. Well, thanks for having me today, Josh, and appreciate your all your help today. It's been fantastic. Okay, a bit about me. My name's Simon Baker. I moved to Dubai in summer of 2005, so just under 15 years ago. Started working in real estate pretty quickly, 19 years old, so a bit tender age and no real experience, to be honest with you. And I soon discovered that the Dubai market was very immature at the time, and lots of challenges, but it came into a very immature marketplace. I started working for a company with, I think there were 3 agents in total. I was sort of given a desk. I was told, make some phone calls, see how you get on. It was interesting times. I came from a sales experience background before. So it was exciting, but at the same time, it was definitely thrown in the deep end,
So talk to us a little bit about Dubai. It's been an amazing city to watch grow over the course of the last 40 years. Pretty exciting 2020. They've got obviously the World Expo happening here as well. And it is a city that literally entrances you. You can see the amount of development, the infrastructure and things that have happened. But it hasn't gone without some of its own challenges in terms of some of the growth cycles where a market has gone into a contractionary phase, some property losses, then going back into expansionary phases. What's the type of profile? Who lives in Dubai and who's buying real estate in Dubai?
Okay, right. So you're completely right. Look, Dubai has gone through the boom and the bust cycle a couple of times now. It's been a roller coaster for real estate agents. From summer 2008, everything's flying, and by November, everyone's jumping on planes and leaving supercars at the airport. So it's definitely been a roller coaster ride. I think you went to 2009, people were saying Dubai's finished, no one's going to come back here again. And soon enough, it was picking up again. So I think as a market, it's been exciting. It's been very volatile. As a place, it's amazing the development that's happened here. So the development's been crazy. Sheikh Mohammed's vision originally was build it and they will come. And they've literally done that. They've taken a desert and they've chopped out marinas and they've made the tallest tower in the world, Burj Khalifa, biggest shopping mall in the world next door. So they really have built it, and I'd say hope people will come. I think it was an amazing vision. I think they could see that, in the Middle East there needed to be a destination, if you like.
So tell us a little bit about that, because the type of person that actually buys here must be pretty interesting. Is it a lot of expats or is it a lot of Emirati citizens that are buying real estate and being a part of that?
Right, okay. So there's a huge demographic. I've had buyers from countries, if I'm honest, I never even knew existed. So there's buyers from all over the world. The biggest local population, mainly done on large land transactions and that kind of thing. The next, in terms of buyer lists, are the GCCs, and then followed closely by the Indians. And after that, the Brits, funnily enough. So it's a large British market here. It's a huge range of demographics in terms of buyers. A lot of investors. We've got a lot of clients from all over the world that come and invest here. For the high rental returns, they're often getting 7-8% income, and obviously no tax and that kind of thing, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a minute.
So obviously that must be pretty interesting. GCC, for those that don't know what that is.
Sorry, GCC, exactly. So this is the Gulf countries. So there's 7 Gulf countries, which are Saudi, Qatar, UAE, and these surrounding countries. Okay,
so there's obviously a lot of people that are making the decision to want to buy here, and are they purely doing that just around income and return, or are they doing it for capital growth reasons as well, or a good mixture of both?
Okay, so I guess anyone who's looking to invest in property would hope to make a capital growth. There's been time periods here where people have doubled their money, they've timed the market right, if you'd like to put it that way, and they've got out and made a huge profit. There's other people that have bought at the wrong time. I would say the mentality, when everyone's buying, you should be nervous, as Mr. Buffett once said. So I think that you have to be slightly careful. You should be sensible to come and buy in this market. It is an immature property market. It's only been here for really on a freehold basis for about 16 years. So you should look at the property market, go into the investment with your eyes open, know where the point of the market you're buying in, the return you're expecting to get, and buy it with a long-term view. I think in the past, we had people who used to buy properties here with a view of selling them a week later. Now, it's great if you can do it, but let's be honest, buying 10 one-beds instead of one, when you haven't got the money with complete speculation is obviously dangerous. So luckily, I think those days are gone. The market's becoming a lot more mature, which is exciting. It's exciting stability, I like to call it.
So it's a pretty interesting marketplace because there's a bit of a conversation between what actually happens about whether or not how a property is actually listed for sale. Auction is not necessarily done here. It seems to be very much a for sale based market. And off the back of that ultimately the person who pays the fee is the buyer rather than the seller. Can you explain a little bit about how that has become the norm and how you're starting to see the industry evolve, because you're just starting to move into some of the sellers also being charged a fee?
Sure. Okay. So I think this comes from historically. So if you rewind and we go back to like 2006, 2007, it was very much a seller's market. A lot of people didn't sell, they were buying, the market's going crazy. If you wanted to buy something on a resale basis, I was working in that market, so I saw it firsthand. There were times when you'd make an offer, you'd get it accepted with a seller. And if you didn't, go and sign all the paperwork within even a day or so, we've had people who the next day, the seller put the price up. So this has evolved with the buyer paying the fee from a market where it was very much a seller's market. They'd never pay you a penny. If you even asked them, they'd probably laugh at you. So completely different from like the UK and Europe and many established models. I think as time's gone on, and obviously the last few years, the market's had a softening, prices have come down. Sellers who more educated on different markets internationally have seen the benefit to paying a seller's fee to the broker to represent them on an exclusive basis to market that property in the best possible way. So yourself to take that listing, work really closely with that seller to position it in the market to find the right buyer at the right price. So I think finally people are seeing the benefit to actually incentivizing their broker, which is great to see. And again, it's signs of a more mature market, really.
So one of the interesting challenges that brings with it is that when people were putting their property on the major real estate websites or portals, so Property Finder is the major one here, is that they withhold the address. Can you tell us a little bit about the reasons why an agent would withhold the property address when taking it live to market?
Okay, so I think historically, again, there's been lots of information leaked from all different sources. So brokers, to be completely frank with you, they have access to a lot of this information. So any other broker, you'd be careful not to whatever the expression is, but not to give out too much of this information, just because another broker could quite happily go and find that property, go on some database from somewhere, and go and call the owner directly. So there's lots of that in such a competitive market. There's an awful lot of people trying to pinch listings off each other, and the number of brokers here per capita is very, very high. Number of companies is very high, so the competition's tough. The rewards are there for the right brokers, but the competition's high.
So on average, what percentage of stock do you think would be listed exclusively versus would be in an open or a multi-agent environment?
Again, I mean, like I mentioned, the market is changing, so I think educated sellers, and it's very much down to us to educate them, are coming to us saying, I want to list exclusively, and there'll be some marketing fee discussed there. I think in terms of a percentage right now, you're probably looking at about 20 to 25% exclusivity, and that's growing all the time. And I think that the more it grows, the more mature the market becomes, the better it will become for the professional companies.
So it's an interesting thing because a lot of people come out and they see that real estate's a great career because you can can earn a lot of money quite quickly. What are the kind of enticements? Because, coming out to live in Dubai, you're in a position that you've got beautiful weather for at least 9 months of the year, the other 3 extremely hot, but you're in a position that you've got a lot of development. The challenges that come with that is that often a lot of the property is very similar. So you're seeing that properties have only been built in the course of the last 20 years, similar architects, similar finishings, similar styles. Does that also present a bit of a barrier when someone's selling a property, because there are so many available properties that could be of a similar type at any one time in the market?
Yeah, you're right. Look, there are lots of similar properties. I think especially if you're selling a property for a vendor that's only 1 or 2 years old, there's very little chance that one could be much better than the other. What we are noticing is, interestingly enough, there are townhouse and villa communities here that are 15 years old, some 15, 16 years old, the ones that were first built, and you do get a huge range from the one that hasn't been looked after, that's been rented out by a serial landlord for 15 years and never had the air conditioning serviced, or never been repainted, versus the one that's been lived in by the end user. So slowly, we're noticing more renovation companies coming into the market, doing up these properties. So and again, that's a sign of a more maturing market, which is exciting to see in the long term. But you're right, a lot of these properties are a bit sort of cookie cutter floor plans. In a way, I guess that makes it exciting from the agent's perspective, because very closely on valuation basis, we can take the data from the land department, which we've got ready access to, and come up with a really, really solid market appraisal for those for those vendors so that they realise exactly what that property is worth, and they can see evidence of that. So it's not like you've got a completely unique house that just was built in the 1900s. It's something that we can compare very, very closely. So I think that the agents who are data driven can do very, very well in this market.
So one of the big things is that in terms of a deposit, that's still 10% on a purchase.
Yep, so the initial deposit would be 10%.
Yeah.
But then in terms of mortgage loan to values, a few years back, the Dubai Land Department, the government put a cap on it. So you have to put a minimum of 25% down payment. And then on top of that, you've got the fees to pay, which are the 4% Dubai Land Department fee. There would be, from the buyer's side, their 2% commission. And then mortgage registration and a few other administration fees. So in total, the end user here looking to buy a house, live in, they need around 31.5% down payment from the total value.
Wow, so that's an interesting driver, because obviously that gets people in a position that they need to have the capital before they can go to invest. Once they've done that, if you're a foreigner and you're purchasing locally, do you need to get like a Foreign Investment Review Board approval or any government approval before you purchase, or is a passport and cash enough?
Yeah, so if you're a cash buyer over here and you've got a passport, that's good to go. There's no other approval required. Obviously, if you are looking at financing, again, they wouldn't get 75% as a non-resident. They could get up to 50%. And we use an in-house mortgage broker that helps people arrange that fairly easily, really. So it's easy to arrange 50% mortgage here, non-resident finance, to go and buy their property. They would need that, just over 50% with the fees. And then they're good to go.
So it's quite a unique situation about how a property transaction comes together. The settlement timeline until completion from sale agreed, or when offer and acceptance, as we call it in Australia. Yeah. What's the speed of that? Because I believe that some of it can be as quick as 2 weeks and some of it's all the way out to 8.
Yeah, so it completely depends on the situation. Obviously, you've got the seller's position and then the buyer's position. If the seller's a cash seller, they've got no liability against the property. It reduces the timeline straight away. If it was a cash buyer, it is literally, we can get it done. We've got a very good conveyancing team that we use, and they can get it done as quickly as the buyer's ready to, really. So within a matter of days, 2 or 3 days would be the shortest possible. That is with the funds in place, buyer and seller both available. As soon as the buyer's got some finance involved, that process is going to take 4 to 6 weeks. And then if there was finance on both sides and there was one bank having to settle another bank's liability, then you'd be talking about 8 weeks.
So those
are sort of situations.
A lot of people have like a misconception that Dubai is only, towers, because that's kind of what they might see, in terms of the photographs, like the Burj Khalifa and all of the above, and they think that it's all quite ritzy in terms of the Burj Al Arab. But that's not really necessarily what it is like, because there is a lot of planned communities, the palms and all of the above, where there actually is a lot of different styles of architecture. Give us a bit of a feeling for the types of properties. Where does property sort of start in Dubai if you're doing an entry level, and where does it kind of go to in terms of some of the sale prices you've seen? Okay,
so in terms of sale values, we deal with a huge range. So we're dealing with properties from 400,000 dirhams. I think it's probably one of the lowest ones this year, which is just over 100,000 US dollars. So I'm not sure about the Aussie dollar.
Yeah.
All the way up to to sort of 20-25 million US dollars. So there's a huge range of properties that we're dealing with. In terms of the communities you touched on, yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, I've got friends who always think that Dubai is all glitz and glamour and, you know, nightclubs and restaurants. But the reality is there's a huge family communities here. There's lots of villa communities, Arabian ranches, springs and meadows, all these gated communities that are fantastic for family living. You know, you go and get a townhouse or an independent villa at a sensible price, and they've got nice community facilities. So it's very family orientated as well. I think some people don't see that side of Dubai when they fly into the Burj and you know, stay for a day or two.
So it's a pretty amazing place to go and watch. It's an interesting, you know, does the buyer ever try to negotiate on the fee that they pay the agent when they're buying their property?
There have been plenty of times, yeah. I mean, you know, you if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So there's been plenty of buyers who've tried to negotiate the fee in the past. You know, I guess there are some agents out there, because the competition level is so high. I've heard of lots of companies out in the markets, you know, maybe smaller companies who are struggling for business, who will reduce their fees. Most of them, you know, the larger, more established companies, there's no way they would reduce a buyer fee. So like we discussed earlier about seller fees, it's always been the buyer that always pays 2%. These days, VAT's come in recently, so that's something where there's an extra little 5%. It's a lot lower than in most countries. They've just brought it in initially at 5%. So that's applicable on that buyer's fee that they pay. But yeah, we don't negotiate that at all.
So is there a position that the buyer would potentially, you know, ring around a couple of estate agents and say, hey, look, I'm looking to buy 1 Smith Street, you know, do you have that listed, and will you negotiate on the fee?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there is a possibility. So like I said before, there's a huge amount of competition. A lot of agents have got access to similar properties, and that's obviously something that's slightly underhand if your agent's shown you the property. But yeah, of course, as an end user, you could go fishing around and saying, hey, I'm going to buy this house anyway, you know, sort of wave a flag and say who wants to do it for the cheapest rate. It is possible, yes. So
Sunday through Thursday is normal trading days, Saturday being a bit of an overflow day, but Fridays is off, obviously, because of religious reasons. Interesting idea is that it's got quite a strong work culture out here, but they're making that decision to get into the office early, and they finish quite late. You know, when a lot of people come out here, they're usually enticed to Dubai because of the no income tax. Talk to us a little bit about that. Do you see that as being a major driver for why people would want to work in the community?
Yeah, so no income tax. There's been many places in the Middle East for years that have offered no income tax. I think my father moved to Saudi in around the 60s and was building air bases and motorways for, you know, government corporations and stuff, and you would only go to the Middle East because they paid you a huge exorbitant amount of money. These days, more and more, we're finding that some of the youngsters from the UK, they're coming because Dubai happens to have the latest beach clubs and the latest nightclubs and the best shopping malls, and you know, so the lifestyle has really changed Dubai. So where Dubai's been very clever is originally they obviously came from an oil state, mainly from the capital, from Abu Dhabi, who have by far larger oil reserves, and they've changed they've changed the demographic from that perspective. So where they've moved is into a tourism with a view to tourism. So where Dubai's been very clever is they've positioned themselves as the tourism hub of the Middle East, attracting people from Europe, from Russia, from India, from Pakistan. If you look at it geographically, Dubai's in such an amazing position where Emirates have really capitalised on that. Is they bring people through Dubai as a hub for the world, really. So they're flying people through Dubai. I spoke to quite a few people in the past who've landed in Dubai airport 3, 4, 5 times. They've never actually stepped foot in Dubai, which is quite interesting. But it just goes to show the huge volume of international traffic going through there that could come at some point, you know, in the future.
So there's a huge amount of appetite here around development, and there tends to be a couple of core development companies. A lot of off-the-plan sales, or a lot of physical real estate sales. What's the kind of mix there on transactional volume in a year? Okay,
so there are different companies in Dubai. Some focus just on off-plan sales, like you said. I mean, going into that, you've got some of the biggest government developers. So Dubai, you can't ignore off-plan. Dubai's been built in the last 15 years. So all of these projects have at one point been off-plan, quite recently. So EMA are probably the biggest government developer who are listed on the Abu Dhabi stock market as well. You've then got other government developers such as Nakheel and Dubai Holding, another company called Mira. So those are the biggest companies they're building the master communities. So they're the companies who are taking huge chunks of land and building whole communities of schools and shopping malls and apartment buildings and restaurants and all the rest of it.
So you've obviously loved living here, being here for the last 15 years. What's it like being a citizen of Dubai?
I think it's That's an interesting question, actually. I know I was asking me that for a while. Because it's such a transient place, some people are surprised when you've been here so long. Dubai, for me, I came at a young age, 19 years old. I really enjoyed the work environment here. I like the fact that it's so easy to, even though it's a reasonable sized city, it's so easy to jump in your car and go and valley park in a 5-star hotel and pop for dinner, or go to the latest bar. As Dubai's evolved, there's all these food and beverage places from all over the world that have found a home here, and it's become as I said earlier, it's become, from a tourism perspective, an international destination, and they've really put themselves on the map. So all credit to the leadership of Dubai. Sheikh Mohammed, that vision is just incredible, really. To build a whole city almost from scratch is just incredible.
Let's talk about temperature. Obviously, coming from the UK versus what's happening here in Dubai, you can get some pretty high temperatures. I think that they have to stop building technically at 50 degrees. Is it true that the temperature is always 49 degrees in Dubai and it never goes any higher from a building perspective?
Well, it's always hard to say. There's always a lot of stories around that. I don't think it isn't regularly over 50 degrees here, but it sometimes feels it. It's also quite humid. So despite being in the desert, as people joke about it, obviously because it's on the coast and next to the Arabian Gulf, it's very, very humid. So in July and August, it is regularly high 40s and 70, 80, 90% humidity. So it feels probably like 60 degrees. It's a shock, I can say that for sure. I'm not sure you ever get used to it. I think people say, you've been here for 15 years, you must be used to it. The reality is, sitting in an AC'd office at 22 degrees, it doesn't quite get you conditioned to it,
So it's an amazing environment to get to see it and just to watch all of that. Are you surprised when you head back into town and you see just how quickly developments occur in this part of the world?
Oh, I mean, listen, every time you get a flight out of here for 2 weeks, you come back and you say, that's a new road, or you tell the taxi's going the wrong way, or you look up and there's a new tower. Downtown Dubai, where you're staying at Burj Khalifa in the Armani Hotel, every time I go there, it's an incredible place. A few years back, in my single days, I used to live in downtown, and you'd arrive back and all the palm trees are lit up with fairy lights, and it is an incredible development. Emaar have taken literally a square of desert and made it into an incredible destination. It's exciting. It gives you a buzz about property here.
A lot of people, when they go into that mall and they have a little bit of a look at that Dubai mall, it's the biggest in the world. They kind of think that everyone must go and do their shopping there. Is that the case, or?
Probably not, honestly. On a sort of daily, weekly basis, it's not somewhere we'd go. It's somewhere fun to take the kids in the summer because they can all go and run around. And you've got some amazing attractions in there, So we've been ice skating in there. You've got a huge aquarium full of sharks, and it is a pretty amazing place. You've got the fountains going off outside every evening. Every food and beverage kind of place you could imagine in there. So yeah, occasionally we do go shopping there, but a lot of the time it's a destination, I think, as much as a shopping mall.
Yeah, because if it was the everyday, then you wouldn't have much in the bank account, you'd think, given some of the most amazing global retailers that actually have some of the most incredible shopping environments. One of the conversations is about why people come and they do real estate here, and it seems that potentially some people see it as a very long-term career, some people see it as a transient great way to make some income and then head back home to wherever they're coming from around the world. What's your view on what actually makes a great broker or a great real estate agent in this part of the market?
Okay, so yeah, I think you're completely right. There's a lot of agents who hear about their friends doing it and they think, that's the easy option. I'm going to pop to Dubai for a few years, make loads of cash and go and buy myself a house to live in and chill out. The best brokers, honestly, are the ones that really invest their everything into it. So they're the ones who look at it with a long-term view. They're the ones that are building relationships with clients that are meaningful. That they rely completely on these referrals. And that's essential to them making it consistent and making the real sort of blown away figures that you hear about. I think that if you do want to come here with a very short-term view, definitely unless it's 3 or 4 years is an absolute minimum, I'd advise against it.
So the big part is that when you come out and you work in an environment like this, a lot of it is about being able to capitalize on the relationships that the business has already got. And it's simple that all of the lead generation stuff that we talk about around the world is almost like universal, where you're thinking we've got past clients that have bought from you that are going to sell at some point in time. You've got landlords, and where do they live and where are their investment properties. You're in a position that you've got past market appraisals that you've done. You've also got your personal network, the community engagement around what you've got, and all of these things exist in every market in the world. And it's no different here. It's just about making sure that you actually chase down those opportunities. Lettings, or as we call it in Australia, property management, is also a major part of the business. Talk to us a little bit about why that's an important part for you to have moving in order for the overall business to be successful.
Okay, so the lettings, I guess, on two sides of it is from a customer experience is that if Dubai's such a transient place, there are people coming on short-term contracts, 2-3 years. A lot of the time, they're not sure they're going to stay longer. So the immediate default is to come and rent a house or an apartment. So lettings is so important. You know, we have people here that have lived here for 10 or 15 years that have never bought a place. They might have invested back in their home country. So on a letting side of it, as a business, we do around 100 lets every month, 100 rentals every month. So you've got 200 clients there, 100 on each side of the coin. And as a business, that provides us with huge numbers of referrals onto the sales team, into even the holiday lets, the property management side of things. So those referrals are essential. So we look at that from a broker's perspective. We look at the leasing team as a kind of training proving ground. When they come over, especially if they haven't got a huge amount of experience, they can go into a leasing role. It's very fast paced. They can, they hit the ground running literally, and learn all the aspects of this job so that they can, in the future, let's say within 6 to 12 months, progress into a sales role. Where they can really see the sort of fruits of their labour. And,
if you have a look at some of the people that have been the most successful, all the natural attributes are there, right? Really good at routine, consistency of effort, being clear about how they generate their leads, making that decision to come in every day and really contribute to the business and to allow that to grow. So tell us a little bit about Haus and Haus, because it's a pretty amazing company to think about where you've come from to where you are today. How long have you been around for, and how did the directors originally come together?
Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I started in this industry over here in 2005. Worked for various different people. I was obviously only 19 at the time. I think I'd had a few old investors during those 5 or 6 years come to me and say, "Hey, come on, let's start a company." I'd worked for various different companies, and I was trying to pick up as much knowledge and business acumen as I possibly could on the job, if you like. And I worked out pretty early on that you had to go into business with people that you trusted and people that had the same vision as you. It's not just about making money, it's about servicing customers and with a long-term view to it, which was so important. So based upon that, to be honest, Josh, I then had to find some people to do it with. Luckily, I came across, quite a few years later, I've been in the job here for about 8 years, came across James and Luke, and we all shared a very similar passion about real estate. We'd all got lots of experience in different angles, then from the UK mainly, doing proper estate agency rather than the brokerage over here. And our view, we all sort of aligned, and we decided that there was a better way. We could build a better company for brokers who wanted to work in this industry long term, but felt that the current company offerings weren't necessarily on the side of the broker. It was very much on the management and the owner's side. So that's how we decided to form Haus and Haus. We started in 2013 in September. So yeah, just under 6 years ago. So we're just coming up to 6th anniversary. We started in an office 900 square foot with the three of us all feeling like we were slightly mad, and now we're sat here today still feeling mad, but with about a team of about 80. So we've grown, I'd say organically, but fairly quickly during that 6-year period. We've all been very hands-on every single day, pushing the company forward in every way we feel's best, for the business long term.
One of the things that has been really attractive in the brand is to see how quickly, you're implementing, some of the things that are best practice now around the world, not only in Australia, New Zealand, the US, the UK, now here in the UAE. And you've been very firm about getting some values into the business. And it's been great to watch that. Your business operates on some values around we work when we work. And so making sure that people are clear about the outcomes. We do what we say we'll do. It's an important part of actually living that. Positive and proactive about process. Also too, we listen and learn. And being in a position that you obsess over customers. Why is it important that a business gets really clear on having those sets of values, and what sort of transformation are you starting to see that making in your people by having clarity on those values?
Okay, so the values for us was something that's really important. These were something when we sat down and wrote a long list of items. We wanted to narrow it down and work out 5 key things that if every broker and every partner in this business operates to these 5 points, that as a business we'll be doing pretty well, hopefully. So obviously the final point, we obsess over customers. we just feel that's absolutely essential when it comes to all these other values. That if every broker, we wanted to create a narrative in the office that if every broker works to these things, it's tough here, you know. In a commission-only environment, the agents sometimes very much just focus on the deal. They look for the kill, you know. That 2% or 5% letting fee, and trying to create an experience for a customer when it's all centered around a financial gain from one party is tough. So I think it's really important that we do our bit to try and make sure the company goes in that direction.
Well, we've had a great day here inside of the business, getting a chance to get the guys in and do a 45-minute call session. We had a 40% conversion from connects to appointments today, which was awesome. But just also too, a learning culture where people want to get in and make things happen inside of the business. And it's pretty incredible to watch, you know, just how much of an international community that you've got, the number of people that are coming from different cultures all over the world to work inside of this business. But yet we all operate in the same commonality. You know, the movement of technology getting us to understand that face-to-face and being on the phone is still one of the most important connection terms to be able to get conversion, and just really focusing on booking the appointments and doing those things well. I know that we've got a number of clients around the world, so no doubt they're going to be knocking on your door when they're stopping through Dubai, you know, to have a bit of a chat with you about how you're doing it and what you're doing as a culture. But thanks from all of us for giving us that insight on what it's like to be inside of Dubai real estate and what's happening at Haus and Haus.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really exciting to get someone to come and look at it with a different viewpoint to help us, point us in the right direction. It's really exciting. I think there's so much potential. So yeah, just excited for the next 5 years, really.